I am so excited to have Dani, Izzie here with me today to talk about parenting with a disability. Dani and I are both wheelchair users and we're mothers. And Dani has a documentary coming out in the near future, Dani's twins film, which she will tell us more about later. So Dani, to get started, I thought it would be good for us to each talk about a little bit more about like our disability, what our injury level is, and what our children, in your case, you have two of them, what age are they?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a quadriplegic from spinal cord injury that I sustained from an injury now 12 years ago. I'm level C5-6, and I had twins smack in the middle of the pandemic, April 2020. They're now a year and a half. Yeah, they're now a year and a half. Can't believe it.
Yeah, it goes by so fast.
And they're little monsters now. They've reached toddlerhood, and
yeah,
I am in the thick of it.
It's real. Yeah. So I was injured in a car accident when I was 14 years old. I'm a paraplegic, L2 level. My son, River, is 6, almost 7, which is so hard to believe. Like I just said, it goes by so fast. I had him in 2015, in January 2015. So Dani, to start off, like, I'm curious. Hello, everybody. I'm curious about your decision to try to get pregnant, like that decision to try and have a family. I know for my husband and I, when we started discussing it, we had so many questions, and there was so much uncertainty. Our biggest concern was my safety. Mm-hmm. Would carrying a child be too hard on my body, and what were the potential complications that could arise? So I'm curious for you, what that was like for you and your husband, and how maybe you got the answers to questions you all had.
Yeah, definitely. I just have to say hi real quick.
Yes.
Yeah, I see a Garrett and another Garrett I know here. Hi, and Sarah. Hi, guys. I just love seeing you all here. So I totally hear you on the safety thing. That was definitely one of my concerns. But I think my biggest concern was actually, first and foremost, was how am I going to take care of kids? And I definitely had this, you know, it's been 12 years since my injury, so I'm pretty well adjusted at this point. But I always battle some insecurities. You know, I still have some insecurities. And before I decided to have kids, I still had a little bit of this residual mentality where I was like, well, you know, I can hardly take care of myself. How am I going to take care of a kid? Especially as a quadriplegic and relying on caregivers and people to assist me to, you know, accomplish my day-to-day needs. I actually consider myself independent, even though I do rely on others. Like they just facilitate me towards my independence. So I did kind of have that mentality and this insecurity. But my husband and I started talking about having a kid, and we said, well, okay, yeah, I had that insecurity, but then I also had fears like you did about safety. So we decided to have a consultation with a high-risk pregnancy doctor. And this doctor I went to was at UVA in Virginia. And the woman she was a woman who I had a consultation with. And she was so knowledgeable. I was shocked. I was so shocked with how knowledgeable she was about SCI. And she assured me that, you know, there's potential for complications with any pregnancy, whether you're disabled or not. And she said that the potential complications with spinal cord injury were all manageable. So she really reassured me that this was a safe option for me. You know, I think really the biggest concern as a quad, and I think for certain other levels of spinal cord injuries, is AD during pregnancy. And I remember we talked about that a lot because I am terrified of autonomic dysreflexia. It really scares me. But anyway, you know, with her knowledge and her blessing, that just gave me, it just made me so excited. And I was so excited that I kind of forgot about my insecurity about, you know, how am I going to be a good mom? And I started just planning, you know, like planning how can I really make this happen? And one of the things about being a competent parent is you don't have to be able to physically do all the tasks. You just need to be able to kind of pool resources together and figure out alternative ways of getting things done.
Totally.
So,
No, that's great. Like you, I met with a high risk doctor and who also was knowledgeable and was honest about the things he didn't know and went back and researched it and then met with me again. And it felt so good, like you said, because we had like a game plan in place. For example, like they said if I wanted to get pregnant, I needed to get off my osteoporosis medicine. Which was fine. My doctor who manages my osteoporosis was like, that's fine, you can get off of that. And then because I had a history of blood clots, we had a game plan that if I did get pregnant, we would put me on a low dose blood thinner.
yeah.
So we just like, don't worry about that. And so those things, like just having that game plan in place made me feel so much more confident about it. So I just so recommend that, like trying to get all the knowledge you can and just to be ready for like, you know, and you never know what's going to come up. You never know, but that definitely, like you were saying, made me feel better. So how was your pregnancy? Did anything come up that you weren't expecting?
Yeah.
And you have twins, so.
That's what came up. I did not know I was going to have twins. And I didn't, you know, I didn't have IVF or anything that put me at a greater chance of having twins. Like this was a complete surprise that came out of nowhere. So of course, I think I was, hold on. I'm sorry. I've got to let my dog out real quick.
Don't even worry. Yeah. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments. I see we have one question right now, which we'll get to in a moment. And just thank you all for being here.
Okay, so where was I?
We were talking about your surprise of having twins.
Yeah. Yes, I think I found out around 8 or 10 weeks that that there were two in there. And you know, honestly, if someone had told me, like if they had been able to predict that I was going to have twins, you know, before I ever tried to get pregnant, I probably would have been too scared to do it, because I would have been like, how the hell am I going to handle two at the same time? Like I was worried enough as a quad about taking care of one. So, and I had a game plan just like you. And then I found out there were two. And all my plans, my meticulous plans, flew out the window. I mean, we were overjoyed. It felt like such a gift to find that out. We were just, it felt so special. We felt special and we were ecstatic, but we're also like, eesh, what are we going to do? You know? So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but besides that, like health-wise, physically, like how was the pregnancy? Did anything come up that you like wish you had known beforehand or that you weren't expecting?
Well, you know, what made my pregnancy high risk was the fact that I had a multiples pregnancy. It wasn't so much the spinal cord injury. Multiples pregnancies are considered high risk, and anyone that has multiples needs to be seen by a high risk OBGYN. Um, and with that, there was more hormones, so the morning sickness was really bad. But also just with the spinal cord injury and being a quad, I really struggled with blood pressure. I didn't have anything that really was like putting me at, or the babies at risk with the spinal cord injury side of things. But it was just really tough. Like it was tough on my body. It was hard. I was bedridden a lot because I was just too dizzy to get up. They did let me take my blood pressure medication, but it just wasn't enough to really keep me feeling okay. And then on top of that, I became anemic, which is common for any woman during pregnancy to become anemic. And that, along with the low blood pressure, was a huge struggle. So I felt I felt pretty bad.
Yeah. A lot. We have a question. Did you have any medical practitioners that were maybe more unhelpful or unsupportive in your pregnancy?
So I had heard so many horror stories about unsupportive OBs and gynecologists. Luckily, I did not have that experience. If I had, I would have found somebody else. Part of the reason why I scheduled a consultation was not just to get information, but to see who these people were, to see if they would treat me with respect as a human being and as an adult, right? And to see if they had like the appropriate bedside manner for people with disabilities, because a lot of doctors just lack in that. And I wanted to have a positive birth experience. So that was really important to me. Now, I realize not everybody has the luxury of selecting doctors, or maybe you're far away from a maternal fetal, what do they call it? Maternal care and fetal I don't know what it's called.
Maternal fetal medicine doctor.
Maternal fetal medicine doctor, right? Which is also known as high risk OBGYN. A lot of times you have to travel further away to get to one of those. And in fact, I live in a rural area and we had to travel 45 minutes to an hour to Charlottesville to get to this doctor. Or actually, it's a group of doctors, but yeah.
You posted on Instagram today about your experience having your twins prematurely,
Mm-hmm.
and what that was like, and also having them during the early pandemic. And I would like for you to talk about that a little more. I don't feel like we talk about those first couple months to a year of being a new mother, and what that period is like, whether you're disabled or not disabled. Of course, there's all these it's wonderful. You have a kid and you feel so grateful.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other stuff going on too, that we don't talk about. And so I would love for you just to talk about that. Your post was really like impactful to me, and I loved your just like honesty in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't hesitate when there's raw things in my life. I like to just, I like to look at them for what they are, you know? So I did have a moment yesterday. It was World Prematurity Day or something like that. And I reflected on my experience because my twins were born premature, which has nothing to do with spinal cord injury. That it was actually a result of just having multiples. That with multiples, you're higher risk to give birth earlier. So, and that's really not something you can ever prepare for. It was so difficult on many levels. Emotionally, it was difficult, because you don't really get to have like the beautiful birth experience. The babies are taken away from you immediately and sent to the NICU. And, you have to spend time seeing them intermittently, and you're trying to work on breastfeeding and lactation, and it's a lot of new information, like especially if you're not familiar with breastfeeding, like learning about supply and demand. I mean, if you intend to breastfeed, of course, obviously there's other ways to provide nutrition for a baby, but I really wanted to breastfeed. So there was just so many layers of challenge with that. And then with the disability, recovering from a C-section I had at the same time, not having enough time off work, not having enough paid maternity leave, and yeah, and being disabled. Like my husband helps me a lot, and of course I didn't have his help as much. And that's really something to think about if you're a higher level quad or someone that relies on help coming from your spouse. You need to plan for the fact that, you know, they're gonna take on caregiving a caregiving role for your kid too. So you need to really find a way to make sure you're being taken care of, because I think all moms, whether they're disabled or not, after pregnancy experience this like phase of like no self-care, right? Like, I don't know, did you?
So sleep deprived. Yeah, so sleep deprived. I had insomnia. Breastfeeding was so hard for me. And I also suffered from like postpartum anxiety, and it's just a lot. And I don't feel like, I wish, like leading up to having River, I took birthing classes, I took a breastfeeding class. Nobody talks about how hard it is, or how hard it can be. Like, I feel like we kind of sugarcoat things, and I wish we would just be more open about it. And just like, you know, just talk about it, because it is what it is. And I think I don't want to speak for all parents, but like it's real. I hate, because I feel like we just, at least when I was going through it, I felt so isolated and alone in it. Yeah. And I didn't really know what all these feelings were. Like, why can't I sleep at night? Even when my son was sleeping, I couldn't sleep. I was just like so anxious. Is he breathing? Is he?
Or was he?
Say that again?
Yours wasn't premature, right?
No. He was like, I was induced because he was going, past. And I was all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wish we would talk about that more, like that side of it. So we were at least a little more prepared for what could come up. Like, but
it's like I said, I think it's hard to prepare for that, but just know to have that honesty out there at least, I think helps. Yeah, because I went through a lot as well, like postpartum depression, definitely, and with all the hormones that just plummet after you give birth. That was really tough, and like having to do so much and provide so much of your energy while you're healing, you know, hard. Yeah. And no sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. We have another question. How did you prepare for any possible AD episodes?
So I had a blood pressure cuff monitor, and my doctor and I would discuss what number was the number where I would call in. And, you know, I can't remember. I think it was like 140. I can't remember the number, but it was like 145 for the top number. And I don't remember the bottom. I'm sorry. I don't know. You got to ask your doctor. But we had that. And so I just had to make sure that it never got above, you know, a certain number. And if it did, I had to call in. But I didn't have AD through my pregnancy. I really just got it when I started going into labor at home, getting contractions. But it wasn't like really bad. I can kind of tell when it's, you know, if I'm in like in the danger zone. It was high, but I wasn't in the danger zone. When I got to the hospital, I think it was quite high, but you know, they have the tools to manage it there. And once I went immediately to get an emergency C-section. the road trip to the hospital was 45 minutes. So that entire time I was having strong contractions. And by the time I got to the hospital, I was 7.5 centimeters dilated or something. So they needed to get me in the OR right away, especially with twins. Like one of them wasn't in the right position. But once I got that spinal, I got a spinal, the AD went away for me. So really wasn't, when it was an issue was after I gave birth. It was an issue for weeks. I think 2 reasons. One was recovering from the C-section. But of course, you can manage it with painkillers. But the other thing that really got me were the when my uterus was contracting, trying to go back down, because it's trying to shrink back to its normal size, and you get these crazy cramps and contractions down there. That's where I would get AD pretty badly. And also, when my milk came in, I got AD from that. And sometimes I would get just mild AD, like when I felt that I needed to empty my breasts from milk. So when they were full, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Talks about that.
Yeah. No, it's Adaptista wrote, "My son is 21 and I still have postpartum anxiety." Haha. Yeah. I don't think it ever goes away. Another question we have you found any tools or devices that have made parenting easier for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a bunch. I did a piece for, you can look on YouTube, look up my name, Dani Izzie, and the organization.
Yeah, we can share.
Yeah, and the organization Help Hope Live. We did a whole segment about some of the products that I was using, but one of them, a big one, is the Lap Baby. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. Teal, did you ever use the Lap Baby?
I didn't, no.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think any kind of baby carrier is really important for parents in wheelchairs. But being a quad, the carriers that were up on my chest were kind of pulling my back forward too much, and I had to do too much work to pull back my upper body. So the Lap Baby was really good for me, because that way your child is seated on your lap, and it's basically just a belt. It has Velcro and a buckle. And the thing is, like, the baby I think needs to be able to sit up. I started using it before the baby could sit up, but they could sit up a little bit, just not all the way. So I would kind of support them while they sat there, but it was much more comfortable for me than other carriers.
What about your crib? Did you have a custom crib made? Or, because I feel like that was one of the big things for me, is like, how am I going to get my kid in and out of the crib? And so what did you find for that?
Honestly, for me, my husband, that was really his thing, getting them in and out of the crib. Because it's so hard for me to transfer in and out of bed at night. We kind of decided my husband would be the primary, that would be his role. Get them in and out of bed at night. But also we co-slept at the beginning. There's Safe Sleep for co-sleeping. You can look it up. There's ways to co-sleep that are very, very safe. And all that information is online and available. But that was really practical for me, because just not being able to get in and out of bed, it's hard to do all that. So just having the baby right there, really good for breastfeeding. Really good for sleeping, and just being able to access the baby, them being right next to you. And you can do it many different ways. They could be on a firm mattress with no blankets next to you, or they could be in a sidecar crib, which is a crib where you just don't put the side on and just have it secured next to your bed, and you can kind of figure out ways to secure it to the bed. And there's other ways, but I eventually did get a crib. And It was quite expensive. It's an adaptive crib called the Gertie.
Okay. I have another question. Do you have any tips for new SCI moms who are healing from a C-section?
Yeah, I would definitely say to definitely rest that first day or two, but then start moving around. Make sure you move around, because if you don't move around, that scar tissue is just gonna kind of get really hard and firm. And I, I still have pain in my pelvic area. I don't know if it's from like my abdominal wall getting screwed up from having a huge twin belly, or if it's from the C-section or what, but I also didn't get PT. So my other advice would be to get PT after the pregnancy.
So tell us about your documentary, Danis Twins film. Yeah, I'm so excited that you're making it, and that I can't wait till it's out.
Yeah, so my really good friend, Brad, makes documentary films that have social impact. And he approached me before the pandemic stuff happened at the beginning of 2020. And he said, can my colleague and I make a film about you? And I said, well, it depends. I didn't say yes right away, because I was honestly, it's a lot. Like, it's my personal life, and that's a lot to share. And I didn't know how my pregnancy was going to go. I worried about, like, what if an emergency happened and it would just be hard. And also I was worried about representation. I didn't know if they were going to make it this, like, I didn't want them to turn it into this sensationalized story. It is sensational, but, like, I just didn't want it to be exploited just for that. I wanted it to be a story about motherhood with a disability, but from a really true, authentic, and realistic standpoint, where it's not just this tale of overcoming the odds, but it's like, here's what I had to deal with. Here's how I got a doctor. Here's how the pregnancy went. Here is how normal our life is, and our relationship different, but normal. So, we had to really have many, many discussions before we agreed to do this documentary. And once we were on the same page, we embarked on the adventure, and we did it. Pandemic hit in March, and Rudy and I had to start filming ourselves because the film team couldn't come out anymore. So that was interesting. And when the film comes out, you'll see it's sort of a mashup of, like, their beautiful cinematography and then our terrible, like, footage that we tried to put together. But it's really cool that way. It actually, I think, gives it a nice twist. So
yeah, I feel like it gives it a realness, and
yeah.
it even speaks to what was going on during that time with the pandemic, and
Yeah.
And when do you think the documentary will be out?
So right now they're in a phase called post-production, where they are working on several technical aspects of the film, just tying up loose ends. They just hired a composer to make all the music, and they have a colorist and audio person working on those factors. They have submitted the film to a few major film festivals. They have an executive producer who's going to help them sell the film. Basically, I think that's what an executive producer does. But yeah, they're going to work on finding a distributor. So, we'll see. And you can follow the page to get updates. And the film team's also kind of working on an impact campaign. And if we can secure more financing for it, hopefully we can turn it into more of a educational opportunity that's sort of parallel to the film.
Yeah, so excited about it. When I started thinking about even getting pregnant, like I said, my son's almost 7. So let's say it was maybe like 9 or so years ago when I first started thinking about, okay, I want to have a child. How does this work? Who else has gone through this in my situation? Like, I remember scouring the web, and there really wasn't a lot of information out there. There's more now.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot more now, especially with Instagram. And like, if you follow, Dani on Instagram, she talks a lot about, motherhood and disability. And I'm just glad that information is getting out there, and that we can just even have this conversation to like talk about it and hopefully answer any questions people have, like you said, try to normalize it, because it is, it is, important. I'm trying to think if we have any more questions. We've already been doing this for 30 minutes, 33 minutes. It went by so fast. Is there anything before we wrap up, Dani, that you want to share before we wrap up? I feel like first of all, I just want to say there's so much more we could talk about regarding this subject.
Yeah.
And so we could go on and on, but I do don't want this to go on forever. But if there's anything else, you want to say before we wrap up?
Just say, just would love to stay in touch with any of you. If you need resources, just shoot me a message. There's a couple groups on Facebook I can give you the links to, like support groups for moms with disabilities and things like that. Yeah, that's it. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking a lot about moms with disabilities, but I know there's also a lot of dads with disabilities that are raising kids. And so obviously that, don't want to like gloss over that. And that's a whole thing that's important too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you guys at New Mobility are doing this live series, and I can't wait to watch your future ones. Maybe get a dad on next time too.
Yeah. Any groups or resources you would like to share, I would love to be involved. I have a disability, paraplegic.
Just shoot me a message, because I can't find where the comment is.
Yeah.
So tap on my profile and send me a message, and we can communicate from there.
Great. Fabulous. Well, I just want to thank you all for joining today and kind of being involved in this conversation with us and asking questions. And Dani, thank you so much for all of your insight and sharing your story. It's so, like, as a fellow mom with a disability, I realize like I don't talk to fellow parents with disabilities a lot. So it was just nice to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's great. It's connect, and take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
All righty.
Cody.
Okay.
Bye,
everybody.
Take care.